Dynamic Radio Podcasts.
5 Live Boxing.
So welcome to a trip down boxing's memory lane. A glorious piece of nostalgia. We love nostalgia, but it's history with a twist. It's being repeated. In 1990 and 1993, Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn fought 2 epic fights. They changed British boxing in those 2 fights. They really did. Now, their sons, Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr, will continue the family fighting tradition when they have what I'm calling the 3rd fight, the trilogy. The sons will meet at the O2 on October the 8th. Now, when the dads met back in October of 1993 at Old Trafford, the show was promoted by Barry Hearn. He was young, he was aggressive, he was almost a new kid on the block. And this fight is promoted by Eddie Hearn, son of Barry Hearn, and he's relatively young. Well, in boxing terms, anyway. And wait for it, there's more. I said it was nostalgia. I said it was history. I said I'd take you down boxing's memory lane. On that night at Old Trafford, 42,000 people were there. It wasn't great weather. It was a bit misty. In fact, there'd been drizzle. And the first fighter in the ring, or the first winner in the ring, was a certain B. Jones bracket Cardiff. Well, he went on to become, when he grew up, Barry Jones, WBO super featherweight champion of the world. And he's with me right now. I just can't stop pulling out this nostalgia and the coincidences. Barry, first of all, we'll talk about the press conference, the Chris Eubank Jr. and the Conor Benn press conference. But tell me about your walk to the ring at the Theatre of Dreams on that night when you were part of history. There are only about 4 or 5 fights on the bill.
It was the biggest fight of my career. I boxed an undefeated kid called John White, who was, I think, 5-0, and I was 6-0.
Local as well.
Yeah, it's great. I went as the opponent for sure. Huge night. The occasion, being in the changing rooms, just walking, doing the tunnel to walk into the stadium, and again in the ring, and I boxed really well. Dan, I gotta say so myself. I boxed really well and getting the win. Only five fights on that bill. Forget, only 10 boxers boxed that night, and I was the first winner. And I set the tone for everyone else. I feel.
And I have heard you say, I heard you talking to someone earlier on saying, it was 1993 when Nigel and Chris were on my undercard. Now that's not strictly true. You were not top of the bill, were you? Let's just clarify this.
Well,
in your head, you were.
Technically, I wasn't, but I do sort of think that really, nostalgia-wise and legacy-wise, I think I was obviously the premium fighter. But Steve, just to be, it was better being ringside watching the fight, because then if you boxed, you were allowed to go ringside. Yeah. Don't forget.
Go and find a seat somewhere.
Yes, being ringside watching the fight than it was fighting there, because it was such an iconic moment in boxing history, and we knew it then.
So Barry and I are in the sunshine, just by Borough Market, off in the distance there. Derek Del Boy Chisora's waving at people and posing for pictures. There are Japanese tourists doing selfies. We're actually standing right here, right next to the Thames. It's a great setting to talk about 2 great fights, the fights that the fathers had, and this fight, which. Well, I'll preempt it. I'm really looking forward to this fight, Barry.
If you weren't, that press conference would have sold you, for sure.
That's a very good point.
I'm looking forward to it. I think it's an intriguing fight. And then people are going about the weight jump, and it's understandable. That's the biggest issue. Conor doesn't look like the biggest of welterweights, though he struggles to make the weight, as he admits himself. Works on the 12 stone plus. And Chris Jr. seemed to be, could he box at super middleweight in his career? He seemed to be a big middleweight, so it seems a big gap. But then, when was it? Late 60s, early 70s, when the light middleweight, the old light middleweight, the super welterweight division was introduced. All welterweights had to jump up to middleweight.
Absolutely.
That was the only passage you had.
That was the only way you had. We'll talk more about the weights, because I know that we're going to hear from Eddie Hearn, we're going to hear from Chris Eubank Jr, we're going to hear from Conor Benn, and we're going to hear from the 2 trainers, Ronnie Davis, who has been involved with the Eubank family since, as he said, he was the second person to hold Chris Eubank Jr. when he was born, and of course Tony Sims, who's worked with non-stop with Conor Benn, but is an old friend of Nigel Benn. So we'll hear from them in a minute, and they'll talk about weight. But I managed to grab some time with Eddie Hearn, and I've been around Eddie Hearn for about 11 years, and I don't think I've ever seen him so excited, so genuinely excited. And I asked him straight away just how it felt to be part of, well, what is just enormous British sporting and British boxing history.
Yeah, I think anybody who was around for the first two and around for the rivalry can't quite believe it. And that's why this fight is so big, because it just appeals across so many generations. I mean, the 40 pluses, you know, the 60 pluses, the 80 pluses, but also the younger generation who are now fans of these two young men. You have to remember, in 1990, this first fight, you would remember it so well, I was 11. And in our family, this night was everything. You know, Chris Eubank,
it was the crossover night.
Nigel Benn.
Absolutely.
On ITV, you know, it changed our company, it changed my dad's life, it changed our family's life, but it meant so much more than that, because my dad and Chris Eubank were like that. You know, he was best man at his wedding. And 3 years on, 44,000 at Old Trafford and 18 million watching on ITV, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Same
you know, I was 14 years old. It was a foggy night, do you remember?
Yeah,
and it was like,
yeah.
and it was a controversial draw. Most people thought Nigel Benn should have won.
And he lost
fight.
a point for okay low blows.
Yeah.
He doesn't lose that point. He wins the title, retains his, and wins Eubank's title.
And for years after that, the rivalry's been it's been bitter. They sort of made up, didn't they? Like,
a couple of times,
but not really. Yeah. You know, and this is where it lives on. To Conor, I think it's a little bit more personal, because I think it's always been that way to the Benns. You know,
I think that's right.
And for Eubank, I think he genuinely thinks he's going to walk through him. And I think it's going to be a tremendous fight, and one of the biggest fights of all time for British boxing.
Now, I spoke to the pair of the boys, and they both say, no, Buncey, I've known all along I'm going to fight him. And, Buncey, I've known I was going to fight him all along. Eddie, you're putting it on. When did you think they might actually fight? Or did you know all along that they'd actually fight?
All along, I thought there is absolutely no chance this fight happens. Over the years, we talked about it. Listen, we bring it up in front of the media. It's a great story, isn't it? And you know, it was just after that Liam Williams performance, and it was just when Conor Benn starts becoming a big welterweight and knocking people out.
Doing good jobs on good fighters.
Exactly. And you realise he's world class. That he was in the office and we were talking about Keith Thurman, we were talking about Mikey Garcia, Danny Garcia. And the Eubank name come up, and Conor went, I'll tell you, I'd take him in a heartbeat. And I just thought, and Tony Sims was there. And I said, would you really? And, you know, for years, I've been trying to do a big fight with Chris Eubank, but Calla Sowland's involvement, you know, a friend of mine and someone we work, changed everything, and it enabled us to have sensible conversations. And do you know how hard it's been, Buncey, for the last 3 or 4 weeks, holding my tongue? I mean, because one wrong word fights off.
Was going to collapse.
And I've learned my lesson from the past, because, you know, when we tried to make the Golovkin fight in the past, it fell through stubbornness from everybody, and I really wanted this fight, and you know, we got it over the line. For 5 days, we've been waiting for Eubank to sign. He's been playing poker in Vegas. He's been going to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, he's been playing with everybody. And it was like, is this ever going to happen? And when it did, and you know, people talk about you should have done it at Wembley. We could have sold out 3 Wembleys, but O2, October the 8th, monster.
Eddie, you talk about being 11 and 13 and 14 during those first 2 fights. Have you sat down, not since this has been made, have you sat down like you and your dad one Sunday afternoon, meant to play golf, terrible storm comes in, and he says, I'll tell you what we'll do, Eddie, son, come here, we'll put this on, lock the door, we'll have a drink, we'll put the 2 fights on. Have you done that with your dad since then?
No, you know how many times I've watched the first fight, you know, the ending to that fight. I mean, you know, you remember him proposing to Karen in the ring after. He lost
blood all over.
A huge amount of his tongue in that fight,
that's
Chris
right.
Eubank. It was a brutal fight. Richard Steele, the referee, who was...
Which you keep forgetting.
Yeah, who was iconic for me watching big worldwide fights at the time, and to see him in the ring in Birmingham. Yeah, it was amazing. And, you know, it was just that sort of long jab that forced a tired Nigel Benn back to the ropes, and then the falling in with the right hand, and then the uppercut, and you know the right stoppage, probably premature in this day and age, but wasn't. The Eubank wearing those white shorts, falling to his knees,
howling.
You know, and in my dad's office, we have the scorecards from every round and a famous jab in that fight, and of course the rematch, the yellow shorts. You know, much more of a showman then.
By then.
The fun and games with Don King and other people involved in the fight. I remember my dad, they refused to play Chris Eubanks' music on the ring walk.
Yeah.
And someone had told the sound guy not to play the music.
Yeah.
And he went straight up the ladder.
I know.
Straight up the top.
He told me
they-
this story a couple of weeks ago.
and made sure they played that music, you know. And that was, you know, you go back 30 years. So my dad was 43, same age as me.
So he was a
You know,
baby.
and I see the similarities. And,
That's brilliant.
And actually, I look how chilled he is now versus what he was like then, which, you know, was...
He was really agitato back then.
Cool.
He was really aggressive,
but
Barry,
he was,
back in those
he
days,
was,
Eddie.
Yeah, boxing gives you a bad temper. You know, boxing breaks your heart. And I saw all of that, and now I'm going through it myself. And he laughs because he goes, last night he phoned me up and he went, how you doing? I went, yeah, I'm all right. He went, I bet you've got loads of problems at the moment, haven't you? And I went, I have actually. He went, I won't ask you about them. Just if anyone can deal with them, it's you. All right, son, I'm going fishing. And I was just like, because of what he's been, like, he's seeing all those moments when he comes in my office and I've got my head, you know, and up all night, 3 or 4 in the morning on the phone. He just looks at it now and goes, thank God not me anymore, you know. And why? I don't know.
But you love it.
Bloodline, like this
but
fight.
you love it, yeah.
Like this fight.
It's an addiction.
It's what we were born to do.
Absolutely.
You know, we grew up around it. And that's when I talk about this fight. My whole life was Benn Eubank. Yeah. Like, I remember going to Chris Eubank's house in Brighton, went up to his room, he opened all his wardrobes. He must have had 40 new leather jackets, all with the tags on. Wow. And he went to me, choose one. I went, blimey. I went straight up to one that I saw Versace, grabbed it off the thing, put it on. It looked like Biggles. I had a big fluff on the collar, but I wore that every day to school.
Wow.
Telling him Chris Eubank. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, I went down to the gym in Romford, and Nigel Benn's team gave me one of their jackets. Now, it weren't Versace. In fact, the material wasn't expensive. It was the nylon stuff, but it was the black with the white, with the red, with the yellow, and it was Pro Glen. You remember them back in the day?
Yeah, the sponsors.
Team Destroyer on the back, and I wore that everywhere because those two were like, you know, and this feels like another Gerald McClellan moment for Conor Benn, where they wrote him off. They said he couldn't do it. And that performance will go down as one of the greatest of all time of a British fighter. And Conor's going to need a performance like that, where he's going to get hurt in this fight. He's going to have to show resilience and toughness, and he's going to have to come back. And, you know, it's going to be a very difficult assignment.
That's Eddie Hearn there, Barry, and you can sense the excitement in his voice, and you can sense that sense of tradition. And I just want to pick up, before we talk about the weights, because we need to address the weight issue completely and totally and thoroughly. That line he used there about, and he looked me in the eye and went, no, in my house, this fight, their first fight, Eubank and Benn back in 1990, was everything. It was all we ever talked about. He said, it made my dad, it made my old man, Barry, but then he also added, it made the company. That's how important and instrumental that fight was.
When you hear that, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It literally started a legacy of its own.
Absolutely.
In another direction. Promotionally, of course, it was a huge fight. It was, and more than being a huge fight, it was a great fight.
Yeah.
And actually, we're by the river now. I watched that fight on a ferry. I've told you many times. I just boxed in Ireland. And I just went. I stopped the kid, actually, if I remember rightly. And I've come back on a ferry, successful trip to Ireland, and we watched it on TV on a ferry, in a real grainy TV. And we all just sat at the bar watching it, adults and kids, and it was just unbelievable.
How have you managed to drop in a boat reference? That's just class. That's quality.
I've watched
brilliant.
I've watched most of Nigel Benn's career through the windows of chip shops, as you already know.
The windows of
but
chip
it's,
shops.
Yeah, I watched it on a ferry, which is quite apt because where we are right now. But it was a great fight, and a fight where, and they've said it already there, Ronnie Davis, like, fighters shouldn't go through more than one of those in their career.
Yeah,
they should not. It was a real testing, more than endurance. It was a testing of your spirit.
And we'll hear from Ronnie Davies later on, where he does go over that and say that again. I want to pick up now on the weights. Let me just point something out, okay? Chris Eubank Jr. is a middleweight. That means he weighs 160 pounds. He's been as heavy as 168 pounds. That's super middle, but he didn't like it there. He didn't feel comfortable, and the men there were a lot bigger than him. So he's 160 pounds. And Conor Benn is 147 pounds. That's welterweight. So how do you make a fight between a welterweight and a middleweight? It's easy. You get a lot of money on the table, and then you start negotiating. And the way the negotiations seem to have gone is that everybody eventually agreed on a weight that the boxers have to be on the day before the official weigh-in. 157 pounds. 3 pounds that he's got to lose. Okay, now that's 3 pounds that he claims he hasn't lost. He hasn't been at that light since he was 18. So that's a long time ago, 14, 15 years ago. And then at the very same time, Conor Benn needs to come up a full 10 pounds. And then there's the rehydration clause. This was the real problem. This was the real staggering, dragging point in the contractual negotiations that took until this week, 4 or 5 weeks. And in the rehydration, the weigh-in for the rehydration is not going to be at 8 o'clock when some of the modern ones take place, or 7 o'clock when some of the modern ones take place. It's going to be at 11 o'clock, which would give Chris Eubank Jr. far less time to rehydrate, which is why he told me when I spoke to him, and he's mentioned it again at the press conference here, that he will not be 100% on the night. Does any of those weight stats and figures concern you, Barry?
Well, firstly, with Conor Benn having to, going up in weight, he's just coming down less weight. So he can train almost like a heavyweight, but he can eat quite healthily in his camp. But still, when you're not used to fighting at a certain... Sometimes you're used to fighting at a weight where you've sort of like depleted your energy, that's when you're at your sharpest. It sounds silly, but sometimes it's true.
Absolutely.
Sometimes being a more comfortable weight, you lose that edge. Because making weight makes you edgy. Not that Conor Benn needs any more edge to his
But he doesn't need to be
personality.
coming in 10 pounds heavier than he needs to be.
It makes it too easy for you at times, and then you don't train as diligently as you should have, because it's just getting fit. You're fit anyway, and not the weight. You have to train that a little bit harder. So let's say, though, so he can train as best he can because he's making the weight comfortable. And for Chris Jr., making that weight's going to be hard. But that's not the issue. It's the rehydration is the biggest part, because once you make that weight, you got 36 hours or whatever it is to put on all that weight, put the weight on again slowly.
Yes.
Because what happens when you're making weight, your stomach shrinks. Why wouldn't it? You're not having all... Also,
you're not eating and drinking like you do as a normal adult.
So to rehydrate then has to be done carefully. Now, when you have more time to do it, over more than 24 hours, because you weigh usually midday and you box at 10 o'clock at night, so you have more time then to put the fluids and the food back in your body carefully, because you haven't been eating rich foods, you haven't been eating smaller portions.
Of course.
Now, if you just eat too fast and drink too much, nature will take its course in an unfavourable manner.
No.
And that's happened to me, of course. I don't want to go into graphic details, where you've just rammed food on your throat, and then it's got to go somewhere. Your body's not used to taking it. Your stomach is shrunk, and you're in all sorts of pain and trouble.
Now, during the best part of this hour, we'll hear from Ronnie Davis, the trainer of both Chris Eubank, the dad, and Chris Eubank, the son, and we'll hear from Tony Sims, the trainer of Conor Benn. Now, they both have opinions on the weight, especially Tony Sims, and we'll also hear from the two fighters. Now, it was interesting that I managed to get a sit down with the two fighters before they met with the press, before they started slinging insults around, and before they started to eye each other up. And they do eye each other up. And maybe it was just because Conor Benn, who came underdressed, he came overcarred in some sort of Rolls Royce that I've never heard of, where the doors open in a ridiculous way, and it cost £500,000. But he came underdressed in a vest, whereas Eubank, who I'm told reliably used public transport to get here because it makes sense, he came wearing a fancy leather jacket with pockets on it that was a very brand suit, which was really bizarre. So anyway, so the two of them were eyeing each other. And when I sat down with a pair of them, I asked them both the same question. And I started with Chris Eubank Jr. And the question was simple. Why have you taken this fight?
This is history. This has never been done before, as far as I know, in the sport of boxing. Ever. That in itself, regardless of the money and the hype and the fame and the sponsorships and filling out the O2 and, none of that matters. This has never been done before. Two of the world's most captivating fighters in Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn fighting 30 years ago, and their sons meeting 30 years later. Who else has done that? Where else has this been done? That alone is why I'm taking the fight. I want to be able to say, hey, listen, all the things that have happened in the history of boxing, I'm the only guy that did this.
About, say, 6 weeks ago when people were talking about this fight, was that the first time that it had got to that serious level? That's the first time when people had started to discuss the fight happening and it's going to happen, as opposed to, it's something that could happen. Was that the first time there had been serious chats?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. There was always little rumblings and, people fantasizing about it and talking about it and debating. It's been going on for years. But obviously when the opportunity was put in front of me, that was when it was like, wow, this could actually happen. And obviously that came from, Conor talking about it and, just hyping up. He's done a good job. He talked it up a lot. And he made people really believe that this fight should happen next in his career. And now we're here.
Are you happy with the weight deal that's in place in the contract?
Happy is not a word I'm going to use because I'm having to come down to a weight which I haven't been probably since I was 18 years old. Wow. So happiness is not there, but I understand it. I accept it, and I'm mad enough to look forward to the challenge of it. Getting down to this weight is, it's a challenge. Am I going to be able to do it? Am I going to be able to do it and then be able to perform the next day after only being able to gain a certain amount back? A lot of ifs, a lot of things that I'm, having to experience for the first time at 32 years old. It's exciting. It's a challenge, and I love that side of it. So we'll see.
Now, you have a good team around you and you understand the way your body works, but will you or have you, or is there a plan to seek some other help, someone else, a nutritional expert, a body weight expert, just to help you through shedding whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever it is pounds you've got to from your normal weight?
I've never had a nutritionist for a fight, ever.
Okay.
This may be the first camp of my life where I may have a nutritionist or a personal chef, somebody who's providing certain meals, certain types of meals, certain amounts of food. I may need that, I'm actually going to try and do it on my own at first.
Have some sort of cut-off point.
And then, if I can see, okay, it's getting a bit tight here, we're getting a bit close. Yeah. And if I'm not where I think I should be, then I will bring people in. But I want to see if I can do it. I'm that sick that I'm just like, I want to see if I can do this by myself. I've never had a nutritionist. I've never had anybody, measuring my body fat and, calories. I've never looked at calories ever.
But you might have to here.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, how close to you on fight night do you expect Conor Benn to be? Or is it none of your business?
I don't, it's not going to be anywhere even close to anything like that. It can't be because I have to, I have a certain weight that I have to get, that I can only get back up to. I'm weighed the day before the fight and, all that stuff. And, he walks around at around that weight anyway. He may even be bigger than me on the night. I don't know in terms of weight. Obviously, sure. I'm taller. But there's, this 15, 20 pounds heavier like Groves was against me. That's not going to happen. Nowhere near that.
So does that put you at a disadvantage? So you may have some physical disadvantages. We've said your height and you're naturally bigger. But on the night, do you see that maybe not being such a massive advantage? Because that seems to be the tale of the fight here is, he's just too big.
With the weights, I obviously have the advantage of being the naturally bigger man. But I have the disadvantage of having to come in at a weight that I've never ever fought at and then only being able to put a certain weight back on. So I'm not going to be 100%. I can't be. But
because of those regulations?
Yeah. I just can't. But that's okay because Chris Eubank 100% versus Conor Benn is a public execution. There has to be, you have to take something away from it.
A bit of a handicap.
Yeah.
You need to be handicapped a little bit.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now, some people will hear that and they'll be like, full of it. Conor's going to beat. And that's the crazy thing about this is that I'm 7 out of 10 interviews that I've watched. Chris Eubanks either getting knocked out in like the 7th to 9th round, or he's going to lose on points. That's what I'm hearing. It's incredible. Like people really believe this. Conor believes this. I saw his thing where he said he's going to be the first person to stop me. He'll be the strongest and the biggest he's ever been. So that's his advantage. He's not going to have to cut an inch, so he's going to be fully ready to go. Whereas I will have a little bit, I don't know how I'm going to be. I hope that I'm going to be
Does that worry
great.
you that you won't be 100%?
Does it worry me? No, because I still, I don't see a way that he can beat me. So even if I'm not 100%, even if I'm 60%, I just don't see how he can beat me. I think I'm too strong. I think I'm too smart, too tough. Super middleweights cannot put me on the canvas.
But how can a welterweight?
Heavyweights in Cuba cannot put me on the canvas. How is Conor Benn going to do it? I can't see it. Other people, experienced people, respected people in the industry are saying that they can see him knocking me out. So maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. But that's the excitement of this fight, is that everyone's got their opinion and we're all going to find out in 2 months' time.
Eubank as calm when he was talking to me with an audience of one as he was in front of the media there and something that was being streamed. We'll talk about the percentage that he claims he'll be at, which is 60%, because he says, I won't be 100, ... I don't need to be. But how was he today? How was his demeanour to you? What did you sort of get a sense from with Eubank today?
I think, like his dad, he's elegantly dismissive.
Yeah.
He's brilliant at this, isn't he?
He's very rude and very polite to being rude.
He doesn't say something, his manner's not offensive, but his words are extremely offensive. To that fighter, whoever he's boxing. Today's obviously Conor Benn in the press conference, and so just saying I don't need to be. And he makes some real valid points. He should be the favourite here, except for the rehydration and the weight, everything's stacked in his favour. He's the bigger guy, the better resume, the more experience.
And he's not over the hill yet at 32.
No, he's not over the hill. He's not. But,
that's an early write-off.
Yeah, it is. But so everything's in his favour. You would feel that. But he was just trying to rile Conor Benn. I don't know why, because Conor Benn doesn't take much to get him going, and also Conor feeds off chaos. So the angrier you make him, the more focused he becomes. He doesn't lose his shape, just much like his dad. That was fantastic, but predictable. That press conference. You knew what was going to happen, but it was still real fun when it happened. Yeah.
He clearly believes, Chris Eubank Jr., that he can win comfortably. That's not bravado. That's that he truly believes he can do it. Even if he's not, I'm going to dismiss the 60% line, but I'm going to allow him to say that he won't be 100%, because I think anybody that has to do anything different weight-wise over the years, they always lose something in that transition and working within the rules and regulations of any weight condition contract.
And I would say that it's a long way out now. He looked facially like he was heavy today.
I mean, he wasn't joking. When he said, I haven't trained, I've been playing poker, I've been playing around.
Fight sometimes, we don't always put it on when we're active, on our bodies. It's just the face when you tell when they've been enjoying themselves. And he looked like he's been out enjoying himself, and he might be heavier than what he should be, but still, you got to be careful, because Conor Benn, he might be a smaller guy, but the way he fights and the intensity that he has, that he hasn't been able to tick those boxes yet, that he can take shots or he can battle through adversity or war of attritions and so on. But you tend to think that he might have that. So even if you're winning the fight wide on the scorecards, I don't feel it's ever going to be a comfortable fight for him. It's always going to be like he was with his dad and with the dads. It's always going to be a fight, but it's always extremely physically difficult, even if you're miles ahead.
Well, Conor did look good today, and one or two suggestions that he's already started. He's already working with people. We'll hear from Tony Sims in a moment. But right now, let's hear from Conor. And I started by asking him the same question I'd asked Chris Eubank. Is simply, why have you taken the fight?
Legacy and heritage. I believe now's that time.
You can judge from your phone. You're fighting Chris Van Heerden, you get a few texts, or maybe 100 or whatever. Once this was mentioned, about 4 weeks ago, first time, I'm assuming your phone, private, and the one you use for business must have just gone crazy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it happens. I mean, you hear people come out of woodworks from like 10 years ago. So I mean, it's the classic old saying, "Who's there in the changing room when
it's
you
tough.
lose or when it's tough?" Yeah. So I won't be entertaining their messages. But yeah, I've had a fair few, mate. My missus, my friends, my whole team, everyone in the gym. So yeah, I mean, it makes no difference to me.
Yeah. Will you be able, because the pressure on this will be intense, and the pressure,
No pressure.
throughout your career, you'll be able to lock yourself away and do what you do.
Yeah, no pressure. I mean, I just don't feel any pressure anymore. I mean, when I first turned pro, there was so much pressure that I had to deal with. I think that's put me in this sort of position now where it's now just become my reality. It's now normal to me.
You're at peace now.
Yeah, peace.
It's just
yeah.
each fight is fine. You're at peace.
Yeah, like I work extremely hard. I leave everything in the gym. I do as much as I can. I do the best I can. Why have I got to feel the pressure? I've done this now too many times. I've entertained too many times for this to now just go, all of a sudden it's going to make me crumble.
And what about you and Chris Jr.? When I know you've been on stages together and you've obviously been around. Have you ever had a private word?
A proper private word.
No, like a sit down, like a bump into each other at a hotel for an hour.
There wouldn't be much conversation. It would be hello, and he'd carry on trying to. If I shook his hand, try and break my hand and all that rubbish. Yeah,
Now,
that's as far as that goes.
when this looked like it was going to be announced, when it looked like it was going to happen, what was your dad's reaction?
I think it was my dad who sort of sowed the seed. He watched one of Junior's fights and was like, "Son, yeah, you deal with him." And then I was like, obviously in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, I was thinking exactly the same thing. And then we sat down with the team. We worked out options. We've tried numerous options, numerous offers turned down from top 5 contenders, top 5 fighters. So, and then I was like, well, what's Eubank saying then? And then that was that, and the rest is history.
Is it your understanding that as big and bold as this fight is, it was actually quite easy to make in the end once the weights had been agreed and the money had been agreed? Is it your understanding that it was actually once the heads were around the table, this could be worked out?
I mean, there's numerous things. I mean, his ego kept getting in the way. Ring walk, second, home corner. His name first on the bill.
Clean towels.
Yeah, all of that. Everyone knows it's Benn Eubank. But anyway, we let him have Eubank Ben. So we let him have all of that. We was arguing over that for a while. I just thought, do you know what? Just let him have it all.
You're not bothered by that,
I'm not asked. No. My ego ain't that big. But, if he feels like he needs all that, then that's fine. Just give me an 18-foot ring and we're good.
So do you dislike Chris Eubank Jr. then?
Just different. Just very different. The apple don't fall far from the tree, and he's exactly like his dad and I'm exactly like mine. So it's just very, very different individuals. Our approach has been completely different in the pro game. He is what he is and I am what I am.
In some ways, you've been preparing for this fight in the gym for a long time because a couple of your principal sparring partners have been light middles and middles.
I spar them anyway.
Oh, you sparred with him?
I spar middles.
That's what I'm saying.
Anyway,
with Felix and
Felix,
and
John.
and
I've flown
Cheeseman.
sparring in as well. So I've always sparred with big guys. Yeah.
Do you think they have maybe overestimated how small you are? Do you think that they've looked at you as a 147, as a welter? He's not even a big welter. He's not there. Do you think that perhaps in their mind they're saying he can't do it? He can't come up to whatever that we're asking him to come up to?
Listen, I really couldn't care less, to be quite honest with you, because he's going to feel it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It makes no difference to me what he thinks or what him and his team think, because come fight night, it ain't really going to matter what he thinks, it's what he's going to be feeling.
I've interviewed you a few times, 10 days before a fight, 2 weeks before a fight, and the Thursday before a fight, and you're as edgy now. And this is a positive. You're as edgy now. Do you feel different already?
I would say I am as calm as can be right now.
No, I know you're calm, but you know what I mean.
Do you think so?
No, yeah,
I don't know. Maybe.
Without a doubt, I do.
I don't know. I don't see it.
No, without a doubt, I think you're. No, listen, not edgy, like jittery and all over the place, but I can see that you're focused on this. This is unbelievable.
I'm ready to go.
And I can sense that. That's fine, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but I'm just find it funny because I thought it'd be a lot more chilled, but apparently I'm not.
Only because I've seen you at various stages. You know,
Oh,
I've
what, you
apologised to you for interviewing you so late before a fight.
It's just funny because I feel like this is a very tame version of me in comparison to fight week. But maybe I'm just like this anyway.
But you're expecting last week the press conference and the weigh-in. You're expecting those to be fairly lively and maybe confrontational. Is that fair to say?
I'll handle confrontation head on.
Yeah.
So it don't really, if that's how I don't know what his approach is. I don't really care. At the end of the day, I'll show him the same respect I show all my opponents that I've stepped in the ring with. At the end of the day, he's another fighter. We got business to handle. We'll handle it October the 8th. You know, I don't know how he's going to come across or what he's in, but I know what I'm about. I know how I conduct myself. And everyone knows how I conduct myself. Everyone knows what I'm like.
Connor seemed a bit surprised there, Barry, that when I said he sounded edgy, it wasn't anything negative. It was just like, I'm pleased that you're already getting your head there now.
But you know Conor long enough now that he, and I said this before, because he hasn't got that background of his dad, where he has to draw from, from a rough upbringing or whatever it is. He has to draw from something. He needs that anger. So it's what I say, you say. He's looking for.
That's a mistake to rile him.
He's looking for problems now, and he needs that because that's what fuels him. That's what makes him good.
A very good point.
And that's fine with that. I've had me and Conor had words actually. He pulled me and said, "Listen, I know I always dig you out all the time." I said, "Mate, I'll be your muse. I'll be your muse. If it works for you, if it gets you at the edge you need,
then it works."
Yeah, because you haven't come from a constant state like all the rest of us.
Yeah.
He hasn't had that adversity of poverty and stuff like that. So he does that. He'll pick a hole in what you've said, and he'll run with that in his mind. Then it'll fester, make him angry. But when he's angry, he's more focused.
But Conor, having been really angry with the British media for a lot of years. And he has pointed out, in quite emotional interviews with me in the past, where he's been nearly tearful. In fact, the tear has just about crept out. And he said, when I come here, Bunty, I was staying with my nan. I didn't have any money. I was on a single bed. I was having to get the tube at 5 a.m. He said, I was walking down and there were people coming in from nightclubs all wanting to fight me. He said, I did. He said, I was. He said, there was no silver spoon then. I was living with my nan. I was making my way on public transport.
And that might be true. And I'm sure it is. And that's helped him develop. But still, there's still been that comfort blanket of if everything goes,
and it was his choice.
If everything goes dodgy, everything goes But either way, he needs to be angry to be focused. When he's focused, he's a dangerous fighter.
Okay, now Barry, there were no dads here today. We understand that Chris Eubanks travelling back from South Africa, and he'll eventually make an appearance. Of course he will. I want to see him on a Harley Davidson and a monocle ride into the ring. That's what I want to see. And Nigel Benn is flying in the next couple of days, and possibly will be around in camp, and possibly that camp will be overseas, and they'll go somewhere overseas for 4 or 5 weeks before coming back here to start preparing in this country for this fight on October the 8th.
And that's smart, by the way.
Listen, I got nothing wrong with that. There are 2 trainers involved. We mentioned them often enough. One's Ronnie Davis, who is generally, is an institution in British boxing. He really is. Schoolboy boxer, junior boxer, senior amateur, senior pro, won Southern Area title, if I'm not mistaken, been in and around the gym forever. And the other one, Tony Sims, I've known since the mid-70s when we shared a gym just about a mile and a half from where we are here. So I've got pictures of Tony and I together when we were 10, 11 and 12. So he's been in the game a long time. And there was a great moment in the conference when Ronnie Davis looked over at Tony and he went, I've got great respect for Tony. And you saw Tony welling up. And then Ronnie went, but I've been in the game 46 years. He's only been in the game 26 years. And Tony was the one laughing the most, Barry. He collapsed. So I managed to catch up with the pair of trainers. Here's Ronnie Davis and Tony Sims. And we'll start with Ronnie on a fight that, has got history written all over it.
It's mad, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I feel absolutely privileged. You know how close I was to the old man. And I've been the same with his son. I was there when his son was born.
Second person to hold him, weren't you?
Yeah. And and I think it'd be a great fight. Eubanks is very clever with his words. I wouldn't have took a lot of notice what he said about in a certain way, but that's Eubank. He gets out, he's good like that.
And Chris is going to be training back down in the gym
Yeah.
in Brighton, a gym that you've been attached to since 1837 or 1847, at least 264 years.
That's right.
It's in the family, so to speak. So will you'll be part of it? You'll be there watching?
No,
watching
I
every
should
day,
be,
taking it in?
I'll be overseeing everything. I'll be working. I'll be helping bringing the sparring partners in. What I've always done with Eubank,
Yeah.
picking and make sure he was at the gym, make sure he was on the roads, looking after him and Jenny, which I've always done. He knows how to fight. Christ, if he don't by now, he shouldn't be fighting.
Tony, you've prepared some big fighters for big nights. Darren Barker, world title fights. Conor through his career and other fighters in really important fights. This seems to have, well, we know this is something different about this, Tony. It's a sort of fantasy fairy tale fight, but it's also incredibly serious.
Yeah, as I was saying, it's like fight, not just fight of a decade, it's fight of a generation, and it goes back generations. And like me and you, Steve, we remember obviously clearly the first two fights of Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn, and this sort of fight brings back
all those memories
that we were so fascinated with, like the press conferences that they had, and like as we were saying earlier, that when they signed a contract on the TV, like
not looking at each other.
Exactly, yeah, and it was genuinely like dislike for each other then, and both the sons, when you speak to them both, they both speak the same.
Was the weight something that you had to really look at and put, look at it on paper and calculate it, or was it instantly okay, instant fix in your head that it was going to be okay?
Well, it was how the fight came about, because we was talking about the fight for a couple of weeks with, not a major interest in it, because I was majorly interested in making a Keith Thurman fight. And then Frank Smith mentioned to me that he'd spoke to Chris, and Chris said to him, if we can make this fight at 157, would you take the fight? And I went instantly, yes.
Good, there we go.
Because I know what Conor walks around at. He's probably walking around at 170 pound right now.
Yeah.
So for him to make 157, he's got to come down. I know who he spars with in the gym.
Always big boys.
Always. I don't spar him with
Of course
welterweights,
not.
because welterweights can't hold up to him, and he walks around quite heavy, so you can't really bring in welterweight sparring for him. So, he's grown up through my gym, sparring with John Ryder, Felix Cash, Ted Cheeseman, all bigger than him,
big ones, yeah.
all well-ranked fighters as well. So, that's what he's grown up sparring with, and he knows no different. So, as long as it's fair on the scales, and which it is, and obviously Conor's coming up to weights. Chris has got to come down to, a weight that he hasn't done, as he says, in a long time.
Since he was 18.
And then it evens the fight up.
So Roddy Davis and Tony Sims there, one of them's been in the game 46 years and one of them's been in the game 26 years. That's as a trainer, not in the boxing game, because between the two of them, they're close to a century's worth of service. And Roy Jones comes in as well. And there's been a bit of a debate. In fact, people are trying to make more of it than normal, saying that Roy Jones has changed Eubank around. I don't buy into that. I don't buy that he's changed Eubank into a different fighter. Do you, Barry?
Well, yes, Steve, I do actually. I think he's still essentially what he is, but he has slowed him down a little bit, and that makes sense, because I always used to say he throws too many punches, and if he threw less, he'd have more punches on the shot.
Makes sense.
Which is true. But he is trying to do some Roy Jones type things, and I don't think that's quite worked yet. But that's obviously a work in progress. They'll find out what the biggest fit is. But I still think that the punch output was what made Eubanks stand above others.
And he needs to be busy in this fight.
I think he needs to be busy, but also he does also need that weighted shot. Jumping in with left hooks like Roy Jones did, it's not going to work against Conor Benn.
Yeah.
The good jab and the fast combinations and feet, and then maybe pushing Benn back later on, that might work.
So really, then, if you look at it that way,
I'm not sold on the Jones thing. I have to say that.
No,
That's the bottom line.
So
I'm not still sold on it yet.
So I thought with all the Roy Jones influence, the way Chris Eubank nullified Liam Williams in a packed and hot Cardiff and controlled that fight totally, I thought that was good.
But it was.
Roy
But
Jones
he also
influence.
had 5, 6, 7, 8 opportunities to maybe finish that fight. And he would have before. So that's a fighter, and I know this from my own personal experience, he's not quite confident, not in his trainer, in his ability to do what his trainers ask him to do.
And he would have to finish Conor if he had a chance, in your opinion.
Well, someone like a Conor Benn, you don't give him a second opportunity, another chance to hurt you.
And also, Barry,
though I have to say, Chris Eubank, he hasn't inherited his dad's power.
No.
But maybe the chin.
Yeah, the chin and the stamina, without a doubt, and the desire. I would think. What's interesting, listening to Tony there and listening to Eddie, it was how instantly they all jumped at a fight that could be made at 157 pounds. they fancied it. They instantly. That was the point I made to Tony. Tony, did you have to think about it? And he said no. Straight away, we jumped at it.
Well, obviously, Chris thinks I can make that weight. I can do it. He's confident he can do it. And the money involved is worth the risk for him. Because I generally do think, I think he was playing the game a little bit in the press conference, but I think he genuinely believes that if I turn up in good shape, at my best, not 60% stuff, at my best, then he can't touch me.
Okay, one man who has never, it seems, forgotten that initial fight is the co-promoter here, the man that delivered Chris Eubank Jr. to the table, and that's a very old friend of mine, Calla Sauerland. And I got hold of him to have a chat with him, and all I'm going to warn you, he's a very excitable young man.
Bugsy, I don't need to tell you boxing, yeah, but I mean, you know that both of them are going to bring everything into this ring. I don't care if it's 60, 70, 120%, whatever it is, that is going into that ring that night. And I think we're going to be in for a hell of a blockbuster. I really do. I think both guys got engines on them. You know, Conor will probably have the speed on his side. Eubank will have the power on his side, despite the fact that Conor seems to think he's going to knock him out. I think that Eubank has obviously the physical advantage, and Benn being the smaller man will be using his speed, you know. But don't forget, Eubank's fast as well.
Yeah, by the way.
My man will win through boxing IQ, through experience. He will win. I believe that Conor will go and have a great career after that. I like him, and I love Nigel. Benn obviously is one of my heroes, as well as Senior is. But my man will win, and he will win in style. And the reason he'll win is because he's been there and done it. And believe me, even Junior, he's talking today, he's been there and done it before. He hasn't been in a fight of this magnitude. And don't forget, I promote a lot of big fights for him. Groves, Eubank, Eubank, DeGale. But this is, like we said before, this is something very different. Very different.
We haven't been here before.
And we talk about having to make weight and things like that. And Conor's got his challenges, but the pressure is going to really squeeze them. And it's the one who resists that squeeze the most. And there, I think Junior's better equipped.
Barry, we're about 2 months out. There's all sorts of things that are going to happen. Chris Eubank Jr. may end up getting a nutritionist. Conor Benn might end up going to Las Vegas or Los Angeles to train. We don't know. But do you have any early gut feelings? And there'll be feelings that you could quite comfortably change in the next 8 weeks.
You know, I don't like to change my predictions, to be honest.
I do. I love to change my predictions.
I know you do, more than anyone.
On the day.
Depends who you're talking to. But except for the weight niggles on me, it's not as straightforward as it seems. But you have to go with a bigger guy. You have to go with the guy who's boxed at a higher level. You have to go with the guy who does have a great engine. So yeah, I think Eubank on points, or if the weight's a factor, he could, because Ben might walk into it. Could better keep trying. That's what I'm thinking there. Ben will go on a shield, and it might be a case that he might have to. So I'm sort at the minute I'm favouring Eubank. I'm not 100% on it, but I would say 60%.
Oh,
Barry, what about you?
Barry challenging Chris Eubank.
Before you change your mind, what's your impression right now?
Right now, I'm going with a big man. I'm going with Chris Eubank Jr. right now, and I think we might see a lot more of the Chris Eubank Jr. that defeated Liam Williams than he's perhaps admitting to. But I am absolutely open to persuasion. I'm also open to Conor Benn being very comfortable at about 168 pounds, just a couple of pounds below Chris Eubank Jr. And I'm very comfortable to Conor Benn outworking him. And I might very well change my opinion tomorrow
Would you
and
just
next
have,
week.
Steve?
Yeah, I know. That's clever, wasn't it? That's what I did see. That's not you. See, people might say, stop sitting on the fence. No way. I've danced on the fence. I did backflips on the fence.
It is one of those fights, so you can talk yourself out of it, can you? And change your mind.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Which you just did perfectly well.
Now, I'm going out to Saudi I'm going out to Saudi for Joshua against Alexander Usyk. The rematch will be out in Jeddah. And it's one of the most important fights in British boxing over the last few years. You know, British boxing, let's not mince our words, it really needs Anthony Joshua to do a job on Usyk to keep things alive. And on the day when Tyson Fury retired again, that's the 5th time he's retired since April, and that's probably the 10th time he's retired in his career, but hey-ho, perhaps he means it this time. It makes the fight even more important. Now, I also caught up with Eddie Hearn today just to ask him, well, mostly to ask him, had he been in touch with AJ? Had he spoken to AJ? Had he seen AJ?
I spoke to him last night just via text, and he's in a good place. I think, you know, Robert Garcia's been a good addition. I think you're going to see a very vocal corner in this fight. I think...
A corner with direction.
A corner with direction and a corner with a plan and a strategy and the ability to adapt. Because you always have to be able to adapt against Alexander Usyk. You can't go... Usyk's not stupid. He knows that Joshua's going to be more aggressive in this fight. And I think, looking at the size of Alexander Usyk, I think Usyk is going to try and walk AJ down. I think he doesn't want to get backed up by Anthony Joshua. I think he's going to try and hold the centre of the ring, keep it close, walk him down. And I believe this fight will be over in 6 rounds. Because that's the period where Joshua's got to put the dent and the damage in Alexander Usyk.
Is that what you thought first time round?
100%.
Yeah, in the build-up,
and
obviously.
Everything that I heard from Josh in the days before the fight, I hated.
Yeah.
Because it was always, I can outbox this guy.
Yeah.
And for me, the one thing you've got to do against Alexander Usyk is put a dent in him early. Look at the state of Usyk's face after the first fight.
Yeah.
He didn't hit him. You know, and if you watch it back, every time he did hit him, he wasn't comfortable. Watch the Derek Chisora fight against Usyk. I've never seen a man look so uncomfortable
That first round,
as Usyk.
he had no idea what was going on.
Rounds.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. You can't let this guy get into his rhythm. If he does, you cannot beat him.
That's absolutely a fair comment. And you're going to be out. You're going to be out in Saudi. It's going to be hot. It's going to be all the usual things. Will you be looking to get a sit down with AJ quite soon when you're out there? Just get because you say you've been talking to him on the text and you've been really busy and it's been the summer and he's been off in location in Loughborough. But do you want to actually sit with him and get with him and look in his eyes and get a sense?
It's difficult because I think sometimes you can be around a fighter and they'll ask you for that. Carl Froch was always a guy that would ask everybody what they thought. Josh is a little bit like that. You know, he will often say to people, in the last fight, it was Clifton Mitchell, the security guard, and you could tell that his head wasn't in the right space because he says, what do you think? It's too late to ask, what do you think?
Absolutely.
But we will have a conversation and he'll say to me, what do you think? Now, what I'd never do with a fighter is go in and say, what you need to do, mate, is, slip the jab and throw the left hook to the body. And, that's for the training team.
Sure.
But we can't afford to let this one pass us by.
Absolutely.
So we got to get it right. And if that means me saying, you have to put a dent in this guy. He hates it to the body. Watch the WSB
hates
fights.
Being pushed back.
He talks about, round the back, low blow. He hates it to the body. Hit the big target, back him up, let him touch the ropes. When he touches the ropes, let him have it. But it's not that easy, is it? I mean, I'm saying it like a bloke who's sitting down the pub watching it, eating a pizza. What you got to do is, Josh, you're fighting a pound-for-pound great in Alexander Usyk. So it's not just as easy as that, but that's the way you're going to win the fight.
Because you told him that very much, almost as you were leaving the ring after the first fight, didn't you? Certainly when you're back in the change room, you told him then that next time round we need to be different.
But I knew, when...
You didn't sugarcoat the loss, that's what I'm saying.
No, because you can't. There's no, you're not a friend with someone if you just don't tell them the truth. And at the end of the day, when I spoke to him after the weigh-in for the first fight and he was talking about, first 6 rounds this and then 6 to 9, and I'm thinking, no. Beat this guy up,
early.
Early.
Yeah.
Early.
Jump on
I
him,
don't want to
push
see
him.
this fight go past 6 rounds.
No, I'm completely with you on that one. Listen, Ed, it's been a delight and a pleasure. Next time I see you, we'll be wandering by an ocean underneath palm trees. That's a nice thought,
with
isn't it?
some walking aircon.
With some...
It's going to be a warm one.
Listen, we can talk about the aircon all we like. Just work out it's going to be linen and it's going to be hot. And just relax and enjoy it.
Exactly.
Eddie there in no uncertain terms that he's going to sit down again with AJ in Saudi Arabia and in no uncertain terms tell him what he thinks he has to do without telling him what he thinks he has to do. Barry, how did you think the first fight would end last year at Tottenham, and how do you think the second fight will end next week?
It was a hard one to pick, the first one. I thought that Joshua the physical strength would be a factor, and in the end, because Usyk blocks a lot of shots rather than slips, a lot of people think. And I thought Joshua would be able to punch him off balance.
Punch through the block.
I thought so, yeah, and I thought he would beat him. But I thought he might go to points, he might stop him late, but I thought he would beat him. But he clearly never, and I thought Usyk was brilliant. This one now, I've seen the first one, I think Usyk might stop Joshua late. Because I think Joshua tries harder. Because everyone said you've got to be aggressive, and he has. But how?
But
He's got to be smart aggression.
Not gung-ho.
He's never been gung-ho in his career. When has he been gung-ho? He works behind a good jab, good technique, always has.
I think
but he had that mentality where when he hit you, he had a smile on his face because he hurt you. That's gone.
I think he was gung-ho in the 10 seconds between dropping Andy Ruiz in New York and then being dropped.
Yes.
Because everything he'd been told was true. Andy Ruiz was overweight. Andy Ruiz was fat. Andy Ruiz wasn't motivated. He was the all-powerful Anthony Joshua. He'd destroy Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz went down. First time Andy Ruiz had been down in his career, amateur or pro, hundreds of amateur fights and an Olympic appearance. Suddenly he's on the floor and there was a smile on Joshua's face and he walked in to finish it, boshed, and he was on the floor. He was gung-ho then for 11 seconds.
Yeah, I think.
Sorry to, that's a fact. For 11 seconds, he was gung-ho.
That was fantastic.
Thank you, darling.
But I do think that he tries to go back to what he used to be, and I think he'll do that. But now Usyk is put on that weight. He's shown intent. He wants to walk Joshua down. He wants to go back to the cruiserweight Usyk, where he blocks and hurts you and makes you work harder than you want to work. And then by round 6, 7, 8, Joshua's going to be knackered, and Usyk will go to work. I really hope I'm wrong, though.
We're going to clip that up and play it, win or lose, because we'll celebrate and we won't ridicule if you're wrong, because that's just really cruel. But we'll clip that because I think that was a brilliant analysis, and that's I think how a lot of sensible boxing people are. And Barry, you are sensible. We've been talking about Benn and Eubank, fight number 3. The first one was in 1990. The second one was in 1993. Barry Jones was on the undercard, and the third one between the sons, Conor and Chris Eubank Jr., will be on October the 8th at the O2 in London. Next week we will be in Saudi all week. Podcast after podcast after podcast. Barry, you're done. Your boat's waiting. Off you go, skipper.
Bye.
So Barry's gone. What a week it's been building up to a fight that's taking place in 8 weeks. Next week it's Saudi Arabia, building up to a fight that's taking place Saturday week. A massive fight for British boxing, an even bigger fight for Anthony Joshua. And we have an unprecedented amount of shows for you from Saudi Arabia. Thanks very much. See you next week in the Saudi sun.
Let's get ready to rumble! 5 Live Boxing.